Hello, everyone. This is Yamina from DrGPCR. Welcome to episode 151 of the DrGPCR podcast. This is a special one because we have with us three wonderful women, three wonderful people, three wonderful GPCR people who are actually our board members of the newly formed DrGPCR nonprofit organization. And I'm very excited to share this news with you is that as of last month, we received our nonprofit status. We're very excited about that. We have many things to bring you, but let's first start introducing our board members. So I'm going to call upon each of you, and I'll start with you, Joanne, because you're the first one to pop up on my screen. Would you please introduce yourself?
Wonderful. Hello, everybody. I'm Joanne Trejo, professor of pharmacology in the School of Medicine at UC San Diego. And I'm also the Assistant Vice Chancellor for Health Sciences Faculty Affairs and very much involved in training workforce development across science.
Thank you, Joanne. Thank you for being here. Anne-Marie.
Hi, everybody. I am Anne-Marie Quinn, and I'm the founder and CEO of Montana Molecular in Bozeman, Montana. I was just telling the ladies about the fact that I was snowed in for the last 2 days in May. So it's a challenge sometimes to live out here, but we develop genetically encoded biosensors that are used by our clients in drug discovery that allow us to look at the signaling properties of GPCRs.
Thank you, Anne-Marie. And I have to jump in here, Maria, before I give you the word, is that you and I met in 2020, and I think it was an introduction. But I remember the first Zoom call we've had together. I took it in the car, parked in front of the gym that had Wi-Fi, and the rest is history, because from day one, Montana Molecular and you, Anne-Marie, as well, have been supporters of DrGPCR. So thank you for that. Maria.
Hello, everyone. I'm Maria Walter, and I'm actually the owner and director of iCaremo Consulting Limited, which is nothing but consultancy for pharmacology in all sorts of levels. So I've worked at universities, big pharma, and small biotechs. And I'm very honored to be a board member of DrGPCR.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody, for the introduction. And Maria, congratulations on having your first partner, actually, at your consulting firm joining. Yes. I saw it on LinkedIn. I thought, wow, this is really cool.
This is my husband.
But still, it's a really cool thing.
Who has been with GSK for up to 30 years, and he is now very happy to join me in our endeavor of consulting.
In the family business. I love it.
Yes.
I love it. Fantastic. So let's start off with just a couple of questions. And before we hit record, I was mentioning the type of conversation starters I had in mind. And when I said, well, how about we each of you talk about how did you get into studying GPCRs and when did you start studying GPCRs? I saw the smiles on each of your faces. Very briefly, I want to capture the depth of the and I will spit it out. It's a Friday afternoon and it's been a very long week. The depth of knowledge that the three of you together hold, and the reason why, and I'll tell later on why I reached out to each of you to be board members. So maybe Maria, I have you on my screen. If you can briefly tell us how did you get into studying GPCRs and when?
That was back, I was just thinking, I think in 1996, in the last millennium, in Vienna, when I started working, actually not so much on GPCRs as of G proteins. So my focus was on finding inhibitors for G proteins, which we found. However, they were not membrane permeable, so they weren't of great use at that time. But then there was in Mischa Freismuth's lab in Vienna at the medical university. And ever since, I've been hooked on working with GPCRs. Do you want the life story or just?
No, just I mean, we could, but
No.
I think people, if they want to hear more about your career up to a certain point,
Yes,
it's another podcast, but we've done one,
yeah.
and I think we should do another one to update people as to the next one and talk more about your life as a consultant now and as a family business, having a consulting firm as a family business. So let's do that. Maybe let's do that with your husband together. I think it would be really cool.
I think that would be fun. Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you, Maria. Joanne.
Okay. So, let's see. I probably were introduced to GPCRs around 1986 when I started my graduate studies. Before that, no idea what a GPCR was. And the introduction really was by way of my interest in understanding mechanisms of drug action. So as an undergraduate, I studied, toxicology and biochemistry at UC Davis, University of California, Davis, and came to graduate school actually here at UC San Diego in the Department of Pharmacology, which at that point had several senior investigators who were studying GPCRs, Joan Heller-Brown, Paul Insel, and others. And so that was sort of my introduction into GPCRs. I had no appreciation for what GPCRs were and how important they were. And, I think, part of this is serendipity, is getting into an area of research that has kept my interest. Obviously, the field has totally exploded, has expanded. Their importance in disease and drug discovery is just unprecedented. And so I love this area, but in part it's because of the nature of the science and the development and our understanding of GPCR functions that has kept my interest in this particular field. And what I love about it is that it's the science that really drives my development, and because it's constantly changing, right? It's like, every month there's a new way to look at something or a new understanding of this class of fascinating receptors. So I feel very privileged and very honored to work in this area of research.
Thank you, Joanne. And last but not least, Anne-Marie.
Well, that's so interesting, Joanne, because I was trying to think, well, when did I first get involved with this? And I have to go back to 1986, across the street. This is when I first became aware of you too, Joanne, because you worked on the same floor that my husband did at UCSD. And I remember you from when you were in graduate school. I remember you very well. But it was at a seminar at the Salk Institute. And I actually, at the time, was working on protein kinases with Tony Hunter and not really too aware. I was also a little bit with the, like the nicotinic acetylcholine receptors and the different types of receptors. But Linda Buck came to the Institute and gave a seminar there. And I'm going to say it was probably closer to the early 90s by then. And I was so fascinated by the fact that she had discovered all these different GPCRs in this glomeruli of the olfactory system, and had no idea what the function of any of them were, but decided they were olfactory receptors. And that kind of started me asking questions of people like, what is this? And found out how diverse these receptors are. And then I really had nothing to do with studying them or anything about them until the early days of Montana Molecular. And I was really just casting about to find out what are the events in a living cell that are really difficult to detect right now with, say, dye-based systems. And so I went and visited friends up at Molecular Probes, and they said, well, at that time, we cannot measure diacylglycerol. We cannot measure cyclic AMP. We can't measure PIP2. So we really need genetically encoded tools to measure some of these second messengers that are involved in GPCR signaling. And then that got me more interested in GPCRs and started building these tools and then reading the papers that the people we built the tools for and wrote. And I started to learn just in a very kind of casual way, you know. So that's pretty much my story.
Thank you, Anne-Marie. Thank you. Thanks all of you for telling these stories. And as I was mentioning at the beginning, Anne-Marie, I do remember our first call. Maria, I think we were introduced. Someone introduced us, and I don't remember who it was when we recorded our podcast episode, the first year. Joanne, I think I told you this. I will never forget the first time I saw you in person, because the story goes as follows. I was finishing up I was towards the end of my first postdoc at Rockefeller. And then I reached out to Tracy Handel at UCSD for a second postdoc. And I bugged Tracy so many times that she said, you know what, I don't have any postdoc positions in my lab. Please email Paul. And Paul was traveling and I wasn't getting a response, so I kept bugging Paul. To which Paul said, well, I'm not sure. I'm waiting for some grant money. Let's see how that happens. And I emailed Paul and I said, well, I happen to be in the area. Can I come visit your lab? Which the reality is that I went there just for that. It wasn't true that I happened to be there. And so Paul said, of course, please come on in. I had a really fantastic day. And during that day, that visit, I was giving a talk. And then Joanne, in the middle, I think maybe two-thirds, well, 1/3 after my talk starts, Joanne, you opened the door and you looked at Paul and said, well, sorry, the conference room is reserved. So you have to move. We have lab meeting. And two things, still stick in my mind. One is I saw you and I knew who you were, but in my mind, I was like, wow, you made an impression on me. Like, this is our conference room. This is it, And the other thing that I felt I was proud of, once we switched rooms, typically when you're postdoc or a PhD, you're presenting, you're all nerves. And this was the first time when I gave a talk and, after 15 slides, I could stop, switch rooms, take the stairs, wait for somebody to find us another room, and then continue. And I think in my career development, this was a turning point there. So it's associated with you saying you need to get out of the room. Right. We have lab meeting.
You learned how to pivot. That's awesome.
Yes, this was it. You're at the source of my first pivot in the context of presentations. All right, thank you for that. All right, so let's continue the conversation a little bit. I want to hear about, when did you first hear about Dr. GPCR and what was your first impression? And Joanne, maybe we can start with you.
Sure. Okay. So I don't remember the exact date. I mean, all these things were just like, I'm just trying to, keep my head above water. But certainly when it started, and my first impression was, wow, this is great. And again, the new generation of GPCR scientists are setting the path. Having a platform that really brings the community together, using social media, using interactive platforms, these types of tools, and also broadening the reach to allow all sorts of different GPCR scientists to engage in the work and showing us their work, and being able to have an opportunity to present their work. I think what you've done really, is first of all, it's unprecedented and it's so important to our community. And I am not aware of any other discipline or subdiscipline that has this sort of resource available that really builds community within the GPCR field, and that you do it equitably, and also a focus on the next generation of scientists and giving them a voice and opportunity to present their work is absolutely fantastic and critical.
Thank you, Joanne. Maria.
I do believe I was working still in Novo Nordisk, and I thought it was tremendously convenient because I was so involved in, company work that often reading and, screening the literature or whatnot was I mean, it was a hobby. It was necessary, but you were very focused on certain projects where you knew a lot about. So for me, it was just, oh my God, this is amazing, because, all the new things pop up, and I didn't have, that was amazing. That was just unbelievable. And what I also think, you got a lot of amazing people on board very early on to help you kick it off. And I felt very old suddenly, because you invited me to give a podcast. And I thought, oh my God, am I that old that I'm allowed to do this? But as Joanne said, giving the young ones a forum and get to know each other and link them up is that's what we need. And it's unprecedented. And I'm really, just amazed of how big it got, and how acknowledged it is, and how well used it is. It's fantastic.
Thank you, Maria. And Marie, and then I'll have a couple of follow-ups, little snippets on the history side.
Well, what I remember best is that when I first became aware of DrGPCR, the world had just shut down. And we had just come back from biophysics meeting in San Diego and Society for Laboratory Automation. They kind of were back to back. And everybody who was really kind of tuned into the whole infectious disease field was like, this is big. This is going to change everything. And I thought, oh man, what is going to happen to all these societies that depend on, companies like ours to fund their society meetings, and it's all going to stop, and people won't be able to come and present their results, and what will people do? And at that time, at least, I don't know if it's true for you, but I felt so awkward being on video conferences, I know people sort of did it, but it wasn't something that I would ever do. And, one of the first video conferences I had was with you in your van there outside the gym. And I was like, oh, this isn't bad, And the other thing that I was really impressed with at the very beginning was, I'm an avid podcaster. That's how I get to sleep every night, is I put in my headphones and listen to podcasts. And I became aware that you had a podcast, and that Paul Insel, who I just talked to at the meeting for a long time, was like, oh, Paul's so nice. I mean, like, listen, And then it was the next person and the next person, and I was so amazed that you took this critical time in our history and just made this forum that we all really needed so badly at the time. So that's what I remember.
Thank you, Anne-Marie. No, this is all, thank you so much for all the fantastic comments. And it's interesting because initially DrGPCR wasn't born because of COVID. We just got lucky in a way, and unlucky for the world. I was thinking about a podcast before COVID. So this goes back, January or even before of 2020. This is 2019 to 2020. And the idea was there's two things. One, I wanted to find a way to differentiate myself from other people in the field who have the same path. Somebody who did the master's, a PhD, did breadth pharmacology, worked on chemokine receptors, some like castle assay GPCRs. And the question was, what can I do so that when somebody gets my resume and gets another person's resume with a similar path, to say I pick Yamina just by looking at the resume. This was number one. But then it transformed into, what would Yamina, the PhD student, which is the prototypical PhD student or the prototypical postdoc, need? And we went from, resume decoration very quickly to what would the prototypical young scientists need. And every time we think about, and I say we because I'll explain in a minute, about something new to add to the ecosystem, it comes down to me being in those shoes back in the day. I don't know if you can hear the trucks, the fire trucks outside. I hope you can't. They're very loud. My window is open. But that's where it started out, as to what can I do, but then how can I serve the community? And which is why it made sense to transform or to become a nonprofit. It's always about what would the scientist in country A versus country B, it might be a developing country or not, need to help move the field forward. And thank you, Joanne, for your comments as well. One other thing that is important for me is to keep the field as democratized as possible. And because you go to an in-person conference, older conferences, you don't know how the program is put together. There is a section potentially for trainees, and then you want to be one of those, but you're never picked because there's no space. And then when you think critically about it, the first instinct, maybe I don't want to generalize, but my first instinct as Yamina, the PhD student, is that, oh, my abstract wasn't good enough, or my topic is not interesting enough. And I wanted to give those versions of me that are out there today the opportunity to actually present their work. Because just as I learned how to pivot when Joanne, you opened the door, everybody needs their pivot moment. And maybe Dr. GPCR and the Dr. GPCR event could be that pivot moment for those young scientists. That's where it came from. And when I say we our previous episode 150, we had our current team of volunteers, and our very first volunteer who had joined us. She's Dr. Shivani Sajdev. She is at NIH in Rastro Loha's lab. And right now we have 2 PhD candidates, one in Miami, one in Australia. We have 1 postdoc at UNC Chapel Hill. We have 1 postdoc in Australia. And we have also a just freshly minted PhD in Switzerland. So our team is dispersed. These are all GPCR scientists. We also have a support team. So we have an executive assistant. You've all been in contact with Ivana. We have a communication specialist, social media. Her name is Andreina. You can see the Meet the Team page from there. And we have Balint, who helps us edit the videos. Not most of them, but sometimes we're last minute. And I want to take a moment to thank him. He will watch all of these videos. Because sometimes we're really, really last minute, like 2 hours before the thing has to come out, and we still don't have everything he needs. And then there is my partner in crime, my husband. So he's the one who's always been challenging me by asking the question, and what if we did it differently? And in the beginning, my answer to my proposal was, well, this is how we do it in the academic world. And it's like, but why? Why can't we do it differently? And that's how the summit was born. And that's how all of these events were born. And I'm going to stop talking here and give you the opportunity to ask any questions that you may have. Please feel free to just chime in.
I don't have any specific questions, but one of the things I did want to comment based on Anne-Marie is, I love to hike, and I post pictures of me hiking on Twitter quite often. But to get to these hiking places, you have to, in California at least, we have to drive 6 to 8 hours. And so my favorite thing is during that drive is I download a bunch of Dr. GPCR podcasts and just go through. I mean, it's like in no time I'm there. I'm like, oh my God, we're already here. We've been driving for 8 hours. So just to note that. And then the other thing is, one thing that's really great about Yamina is she can pivot, obviously, and is accessible. So we, through our interactions and talking about science and talking about GPCRs, have had several phone calls, and several of them were taken outside. I think it was the jiu-jitsu studio where her son was, and where she's in the parking lot, and I'm like, where are you? And she's got her earphones on, and we're having our conversation about whatever related to GPCRs. So that's been a lot of fun.
Thank you. That's part of pivoting. You do whatever you can wherever possible. And you're right, it was a jiu-jitsu class that you mentioned. Yeah, I think I had the laptop on a car, or somebody else's car.
Yeah.
Trying to answer those questions. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
Maria, you look like you wanted to say something.
Oh no, just because you talked about cars. My husband and I just bought our first car together. and we got a license plate with the name of the receptor that we both worked on when we met. That's how geeky one can be. So if you see a car in the UK, GPR-55, that's us.
I love it. I love it. I love it.
Oh.
Yeah. So maybe I can update. And Mary, you were gonna say before I update you all.
Just that the comment that Maria you made and Yamina just about family, I should really say, to young scientists who are thinking, maybe the academic route isn't for me, and maybe I would someday like to start a company. And I really did take advantage of family. I mean, maybe too much, but I took advantage of my brilliant family members to really shore me up in this effort to get Montana Molecular off the ground. And that includes my husband, Tom Hughes, and he really is kind of a great in the field of genetically encoded technologies and biosensors. And so he really helped me from the very beginning with those first, we're an unusual company in that we have never had any kind of outside investment. We really bootstrapped the company and started out with NIH grants, and then from there got things to market, commercialized. And then, but at some point I needed a web page. And so I went to my niece, who was really good at art, didn't know anything about website development, but she's wicked smart, and Princeton alum and all that. And she developed our website. And then I realized at the point where we finally had technologies, I needed somebody who knew something about commercialization and getting things to market. And I realized, oh, that son of mine, he studied finance and he worked in sales. He would be perfect. And so I always tease Sam Hoare because sometimes he says in group meetings where we have a visitor, I'm the only one here who's not related to Anne Marie. And I thought about it and I thought, you know what? I remember my grandmother's maiden name was Hoare. And so I went back to the family Bible and I see this whole list of Hoares. No, Sam, we really might be related. So I don't know. And in June, then my great nephew will start as an intern here. So we'll keep the family thing going. And there's a lot of people also that aren't related in the company now as we're much bigger, but it's really a great way to start out by, relying on the people that you can trust and that are so close to you.
No, I agree. And that's pretty much what we've done. It's a nonprofit now, but it started out as a side project for me with my husband's business skills. He's a consultant and business strategist, and he kept pushing. So I may be the face, but I'm not the only person behind Dr. GPCR. And I cannot, I obviously contribute to the ideas, but I cannot take credit for everything. It's
right.
It's in the family, and within the same, under the same roof, but it's also part of the GPCR field because we're a big family. And I need to say this. I thank everyone who's ever been on the podcast, everyone who's ever given a talk, who's been flexible moving their talk because we couldn't fill a slot, or everyone who has accepted, for example, at the moment, the Dr. GPCR University has been going really well. We ran the first class with Dr. Terry Kinakin in February. Now Sam is actually teaching data analysis this month. It's a hands-on workshop, and the amount of interest for both classes has been just phenomenal. You'd think that you can go into papers, you can kind of figure it out, but this is something that's so unique. And it goes back to the PhD student or PhD student X and postdoc Y, or scientists at company XYZ. that needs that support, and Dr. GPCR is here to do just that. I have a million other ideas in the back pocket, and I think having the three of you on the board is going to help us also focus. We are doing right now in the background revamping the website, revamping the strategy. So we're going to have a timeline-based strategy with down from high level goal to the like list of tasks that need to be done and who is responsible for those. And all of this started out with just a crazy idea of what if I just started interviewing people and talking to them about their ideas and their careers. So, I think the one take home message for anyone listening is if you have an idea, just try it, because you never know. You absolutely never know. I never thought I would create a nonprofit or any organization for that matter. Starting from scratch.
Yamina, I just wanted to jump in because we have two employees now that are taking Sam's course, and they also took Terry Kanakin's course. And I think we have actually 4 in Terry's course, but the 2 women who are in Sam Hoare's class, data analysis class right now, they are both expecting babies. And the part of the motivation was, well, after the baby comes, it would be nice to have some time where you didn't come into the office. You didn't have to find care for the baby, and you could work from home looking at data, because we sure generate a lot of it. And Sam is always available to kind of oversee that. But it was a big motivation was, what are the things that a young scientist can do from home when they have a newborn? So
yeah, you're up at all hours, so you can actually do that.
As you know well.
Yes. Joanne.
I think this is fantastic. And one of the things I wanted to comment on is just the entrepreneurial spirit and capacity that all of us have studied GPCRs or cell signaling in some sort of way, and our career paths have gone in very different directions. I'm an academic, but I love doing what I do. And as an academic, there are so many different things that I have opportunities to do that are new and exciting, that I love. Part of it is consulting with companies, serving on advisory boards for companies. And so we really are really learning about, the things that are, being pushed forward for clinics, learning about all of the, the challenges, the opportunities, the approaches, the innovation, all of that sort of stuff. And I think it's just really a point to particularly for the young folks that are listening, is that, a career in science can take many, many different directions. And not to, and these careers, obviously we're all very satisfied with what we do. I love my job. I can't think of anything else I would not, that I would want to do that would be different. And my job has so many different dimensions as well. And I have the freedom to pursue so many different aspects of my job. So I just wanted to put that out there, that, we're all also, entrepreneurs, and studying GPCRs and understanding pharmacology, that skill set, that capacity to look at quantitative analyses and big data sets and those sort of things are really critical skills that you can apply to all sorts of different types of professions and jobs, and utilize it in different ways. And so, I think a critical part of training is really gaining those critical skills and thinking about it in quantitative terms and how to measure it, and thinking about it with data as well. And this is one of the ways in which I approach some of the work that I do for training and workforce development. We take a data-driven approach. It's actually a scientific approach. So anyway, I just wanted to put that out there.
No, thank you. I think that's valuable. Maria, before I let you go next, I just wanted to mention that it's interesting that you mentioned this. So, and I want to bring this back to Dr. GPCR and also maybe inspire anyone listening to this. Is it started out with I see the field, or the GPCR field, as our playground from an ecosystem perspective, but under it, there's so many layers. there's marketing, there's communication, there is science communication, like scientific communication, there's business behind it. Although we're now a nonprofit, you still need money to actually sustain and offer the services that you're offering to the community. And these are things that we learn how to do on the go. For example, just to give you a couple of ideas, we use, for example, Trello to manage our tasks. There's deadlines associated. We use a system to manage all the social media posts. Somebody has to write them, somebody has to make the images, and then somebody has to schedule them. And we have to figure out, okay, when do we do what from an event perspective, and how, what is a good timing for us to start talking about it? Because we realize that pushing out too much information, people just get confused. We've done the first course with Terry Kinnick, which I think was a wonderful course. I mean, it was oversubscribed. We put people on a wait list. He's coming back in September and October, bringing back the first introduction course, and we have, based on the questions people were asking, a second, more advanced course. But all behind the scenes, there's lots of things that need to happen. Also, Anne-Marie, you mentioned website development. I mean, that's a whole other realm, and we needed to find the right tool to help us to do that. So basically, what I want to get to is the fact that our volunteers, who are GPCR scientists at different levels, my hope for them is that they're going to develop skills that use the skills that they are developing in the lab, in their institutions, but also develop extra skills. Communication, being more comfortable communicating their science, being able to write a social media post. It sounds trivial, but when you need to communicate something scientific in 140 characters, it's not that easy. And you want to make sure that people actually you get people's attention. So Maria, please, you wanted to add something? No? Okay.
Yes, no, actually, what I did want to say, we talked before about family members being part of our endeavors. And you said, Yamina, the GPCR family. Again, I think the network that we have here, this entire community, is the most important thing of the entire endeavor, because whatever, from my example, I did networking, knowing people, bringing people together as you do as well, Yamina. That is so much easier when you actually know, for example, people through your podcasts, right? When you know, oh, this is actually a person, this is not a guru. This is actually someone with stories and someone who has a passion for science like me. I think the threshold to approach people that you're interested in working with, or asking them for tools or compounds, is so much lower now because of this network. And I think that is so important to have. And thank you for that.
Thank you. No, I really appreciate it. And I think the ecosystem, the platform itself is built out in a way that once you're in, we screen everybody manually. So anyone trying to sign up, you have to tell us what's your connection to the GPCR field. Otherwise, we will say thank you, but we're sorry we can't be in. And it's a pretty wide net. So now, don't get me wrong, it's not very narrow. And then inside the ecosystem, there's multiple things that people can do. There's groups, forums. Now the ecosystem at the university group. So anyone who's in the live courses ends up in the same group. You get the videos, you get the content, you get to ask questions. Any questions, you get to introduce yourself, and that's how you get to network. One thing we have yet to do, and I'm happy to announce that we're going to be doing it this year for the first time, is have a first in-person event. So we are co-organizing the first in-person event, and it's going to be the Adhesion GPCR workshop held in Mexico City. Dr. GPCR, and I don't know, it's kind of difficult because sometimes people say, "Oh, you're Dr. GPCR," and I'm like, not really, but at the same time I am. So we're co-organizing it with the Adhesion GPCR Consortium, and it's going to be 3 days in person. Very excited to be participating and bringing to life a first in-person event for the community. We're working on the website. It's already in the on the website. It says edition 24. You'll be able to access that information. But it's a milestone, definitely, with the courses and with the in-person meetings. All right. I think Joanne or Anne-Marie, you looked like you wanted to say something.
Oh, I was just thinking about teaching a course down in Mexico City years ago with Jim Bolter and some folks, Greg Lemke, some folks at the Salk Institute, and how there was this one afternoon where we took a field trip with all our students from UNAM, which is their big university, and they took us out to the pyramids. So we need to do a field trip if we're going to be in Mexico City. We need to do a field trip to the pyramids. It's not so long, it's not such a long distance.
Yeah.
But,
it's Tuesday to Friday, and for you and Marie and for all of the listeners, we're going to be looking for sponsors to help actually sponsor transportation from the hotel to the to where the event is. So the event or the talks will be at Sinvestav in Mexico City, and we're Anthony Boucard and I, who are putting together the behind the scenes details. We were thinking, okay, what would be the purpose of having sponsors? It should really help us collect people from their hotels that are located in the same area and take them to Sinvestav back and forth during those 3 days. So just putting it out there for everyone listening. If anyone is interested in sponsoring the event, just reach out to me at hello@drgpcr.com. Although I have to say the hello@drgpcr.org email is now also live, up and running. But thank you for that.
You can count on us.
Absolutely,
On us.
that would be
We're
amazing. Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you.
We're
Thank you.
I'll
let Anthony know. Yeah, one of the thoughts I had is the primary cilia signaling, and I think you have a CycloKMP kit that allows to detect.
Yeah, all kinds of targeted biosensors now, not just cilia anymore, but the endosome and different areas of the membrane and lipid rafts, and so the Golgi. So all kinds of targeted biosensors now that are really, I think, going to change the way people think about cell signaling once they are able to make those measurements.
Love it.
Particularly GPCR signaling.
I love it. All right, so I want to let you all go, but as a final word, I just want to mention to say thank you again to the three of you for joining us, for being our board members, and also that we're going to have our first board meeting in July, which I'm excited about. I still have to put together a presentation, send it to you at least a week early for you to peruse. The idea is to be able to communicate to you. I'm thinking here, long term, it would be nice to have a scientific advisory committee to help us figure out, okay, for the next programs, who should we invite, who's working on what. To be honest, I've done this for the past 4 years. We now have a database of speakers we wanted to invite, we invited, who came, but having that type of board, but also a business advisory board where we can figure out the best ways to serve the community, and at the same time making sure that Dr. GPCR continues to live on for many, many years to come. Any final words before we part?
No, just let us know how we can help. We're here to help. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Anya.
Yeah, I just want to express my gratitude, and I think what you're doing is fantastic, organizing this with the board and getting connecting and networking with individuals from science expertise as well as business expertise is absolutely critical. And so I look forward to participating in this journey with you.
Thank you, John. Maria?
Same here. I think we are starting something really exciting here. So thank you for having me on board as well.
Thank you for joining us. And maybe one last snippet of information for the audience. When we started thinking about the nonprofit and about the fact that we needed a board, I was trying to think about, okay, who do I want? Not as a person, but as an expertise, and what the diversity of people I want onto the board. And very quickly, the first thing I had in mind, and we were discussing this in the car with my husband, is that I wanted an all-female board. Actually, he's going to be the only person, the only male board member. He is our treasurer and secretary, and who's going to be joining us on the meetings. But I absolutely wanted, from a scientific perspective, I wanted female scientists, a different career paths, currently doing different things, but all around the same theme, which is our beloved family of proteins. And I think with the three of you, we absolutely are in good hands. So with this,
well, thank you.
Please go ahead.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. With this, I want to say thank you for your time. We'll see you in July. I will see you, not everyone, and not anybody else. And in the meantime, please stay safe, and you know where to find me if you need anything else.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you so
Take
much.
care, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye.
Enjoy the weekend.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.